Not long ago I made this really nice workbench. It is some IKEA cabinets with a custom countertop made out of some plywood with floorboards glued on top of that. And as you can see, the cabinets are completely empty, and that is what I will address in this video by making some drawers for them. A neighbor of mine was doing some kitchen renovation, and as floor protection they used plywood sheets. After the renovation was done, these sheets were gonna be thrown away, so instead of throwing them away, I asked them if I could have them, and I got them for free. The quality of these sheets are really poor. They were left outside in the rain for a few days, and obviously they have been damaged from the renovation. They have dents, scratches, yeah, pretty much any damage you can think of, they have it. So before we take any measurements, we need to decide the drawer layout. There are many different drawer layouts you can use, but it all depends on what you're gonna have in your drawers. If you're not sure what you're gonna have in your drawers, it's better to use a mix of different sized drawers. The design I'm gonna use is 4 small drawers in the top and 2 medium-sized at the bottom. A drawer is assembled like this. This is the front piece and these are the 2 walls. This is because when we pull out the drawer, we'll pull on this front piece. When it's assembled like this, it has a much stronger joint than when it's assembled like this. Now when we know how the drawer is supposed to be assembled, we also know what measurements to take. The first measurement I take is the cabinet inside width. Next up, we have the cabinet inside depth, followed by the drawer wall thickness and the slider thickness. Now we can do some simple math to figure out the dimensions for this drawer. Let's start with the drawer front. We take the cabinet inside width, and then we subtract the drawer wall thickness for each side. And we also subtract the slider thickness for each side. And finally, we also subtract an additional millimeter to this. This last millimeter is just to make sure the drawer will fit. You can't install a too wide drawer, but you can always install a too small drawer. Now you see here on the back of the slider we have the C-shaped cutouts. These can be pulled out to act as a distance between the cabinet wall and the slider itself. Really smart function. Now if you don't want to mess around too much with math, you can simply just take 2 of the sliders you're going to use, press them against the wall, and then you're going to take 2 pieces of plywood that has the same thickness as the walls on the drawer. Also place them like that, and then you take stay. Yeah. And just measure the distance between that wall and these pieces, which is the same value we calculated earlier. Next, we need to know how deep the drawer should be. For that, we take the cabinet inside depth and subtract 0.5 centimeters, and that is to leave some room behind the drawer so that when we close the drawer, it won't slam on the back of the cabinet. Next up, we want to know how tall the drawer should be. This is decided by how tall the drawer front is. The drawer front is in general about 1 inch or 2 to 3 centimeters taller than the drawer itself. It should look something like this. To figure out the height of the drawer front, we first need to know how tall the cabinet is on the outside. This is the total height all my drawer fronts has to cover. However, let's say we have 4 drawers, then we can't just divide this by 4 because we need a small gap of about 2 mm between each drawer front, and that is to prevent any type of jamming. Now the drawer layout I'm gonna use is 4 small drawers and 2 medium-sized drawers. I want all my small drawers to be 8 cm tall each, and with the remaining space I simply just divide it by 2. But I also need to keep in mind the gap between each drawer. I'll start with adding a gap between the countertop and the first drawer. I then add a drawer, and after that another gap, and I keep doing that until I reach the bottom. All my 4 small drawers took up a space of 33 cm including all the gaps. The remaining space below my 4 small drawers are 47 centimeters, but I can't just divide that by 2 because I need to subtract 0.2 centimeters for the gap. So the remaining 2 medium-sized drawers ended up being 23.4 centimeters tall. Alright, so moving back to the drawer height again, we know that the 4 small top drawers are gonna be 8 centimeters tall. If we now remove the 2.5 centimeters that we talked about earlier, we get the drawer height for all the small drawers. We now also do the same thing for the 2 remaining medium-sized drawers. It's finally time to start building something, and I start by sanding the plywood sheets. They are in very bad condition, and even though I can't get them perfect, it's better to do some sanding than nothing at all. And here you can see how badly bent the plywood sheet was when I cut it. Alright, a quick tip when you're cutting plywood. Add a strip of plywood in the back with double-sided tape and just put a
old piece of plywood on the bottom as well. That way when you cut the plywood you end up with really clean cuts on the bottom. You can see here, this is on the bottom, not the top. The top is actually worse off than the bottom. See? So do it like this and you will get really clean cuts. When it comes to the drawer bottom, you have a few options to choose from. First of all, we have these two that are butt joints. Here you install the drawer bottom inside all the walls. Here you install the bottom underneath the drawer walls. And in this one you cut out the slot in the walls for the drawer bottom. And finally in this one you also cut out the slot, but it's more like a combination of A and B. Option C is the most commonly used one when you buy things from like IKEA and stuff like that. Option B is the easiest one to make and fit, because it doesn't really matter if it's a tad bit too big or too small, it will still fit. However, it's also the weakest one of all these options. What you might notice here is that option B also takes up a little bit of the drawer height on the side. So when you calculate the wall height, you need to subtract the bottom of the drawer. Out of these options, I will go with the option D, and that is simply because it looks nice from the side, it's easy to fit, and it has a really strong joint over here. So next up, I'm gonna remove some materials on all the drawer walls, and that is so that I can fit the drawer bottom like so. Alright, so now all the wall pieces have been prepared. So all I need to do now is to assemble them. To do that, I will use some glue and some brad nails.
Now a drawer can't just be made out of walls, it also needs a bottom, and that is what I'm cutting out here. What makes this type of drawer bottom so good is that it's super easy to install. It automatically makes the box square, and it also straightens out all the sides that are bowing. I don't have to think about any alignment at all. I just add some glue, press the bottom into the frame, and add some brad nails to secure it while the glue dries. It's that simple.
Okay, so all the drawers are now assembled and are ready to be installed, but before we can do that, we first of all need to install all the sliders. As long as you know roughly where the drawers are gonna be, you can estimate where the sliders are gonna be. The only important thing here is that they need to be perfectly in level and that they are somewhere along the drawer side. It doesn't really matter if they are high up on the drawer or low down, as long as they are somewhere on the drawer side. I calculated roughly where all the drawer slides are gonna be, and I made these, what are they called? Distances that I can use to get the drawer in a perfect position. I will start to install the sliders from the top and go to the bottom. And that's because if I start from the bottom, the slider will be in the way for the next distance.
I first press a distance against the cabinet wall and lay a slider on top of it. I line the slider with the front of the cabinet, and to ensure it does not protrude out from the cabinet, I push it inwards about a millimeter. I use a self-centering drill bit prior to screwing in any screws to ensure that they are all in the center of the holes in the slider. I always begin adding screws from the cabinet's back and work my way forward.
I'm not really sure how this happened, but I have apparently made the drawers a tad bit too small. But that doesn't change much. Remember those C cutouts in the sliders I mentioned? The ones that looked like this? Well, I get to use them now. There's so little distance they need to come out, so I won't do it on one side. Take a few cards and just trying to figure out the distance between the drawer and the slider, and when it's not too loose and not too tight, I can take these playing cards, measure how thick they are, and then just pull out the slider from the cabinet wall, and that should fix the problem.
I need to rise up these cutouts to match the height of these playing cards, and I will do so with a simple screwdriver. I can't just leave it like this. I also need to flatten out the tops so that the screw heads are flush with the steel. To flatten it, I put a little piece of metal under the cutout and just bend it down. And now I fine-tune it to match the height of the playing cards. And there we go.
Alright, so the slider has now been installed. As you can see, it's protruding out from the cabinet wall a little bit. You can see here, this one is still not adjusted. This one is. You can take the playing cards and confirm that it is about right. I didn't pull it out enough, but that doesn't really matter. There's still a bit of slack in the sliders on both sides. So that should be good. Oh, I can feel it gripping on both sides, but not so much that it's restricting the movement. Yeah, this is perfect. Perfect.
To make the drawers a little bit nicer to handle, I round off the edges. All of the drawers can now be mounted. I first placed a thin sheet of acrylic glass at the bottom of the cabinet to serve as a temporary distance. Its function is to raise the bottom drawer so that it's raised up from the bottom of the cabinet. Without it, the drawer would rub against the cabinet's bottom. Next, I add something heavy at the back of the drawer to act as a counterweight for when the drawer is pulled out during installation. Just enough of the drawer and the sliders are pulled out to reveal the first set of mounting holes. I make sure the slider is flush with the drawer front and then use a self-centering drill bit in the slider holes to ensure the screws will also be in the center of the mounting holes. When the first set of screws are in place, I pull out the drawer to expose the next set of holes and repeat the process. I need to remove the drawer from the sliders in order to access the last set of mounting holes. For the next drawer I use a thicker sheet as the distance, but not the full 2.5 cm I decided earlier. This is due to the bottom drawer's front, which extends lower than the drawer itself to conceal the cabinet's bottom. But after the second drawer is installed, I will use the 2.5 cm distance for the remaining drawers. I always check so the newly installed drawer is at the correct position and adjust if necessary. If at all possible, clamp the slider in place as you tighten the first set of screws. It's very simple to accidentally move the slider, which will cause the drawer to be out of alignment. Hey! Remember, if you like this video, hit that like button. Alright, so we are almost done. Next up we're gonna install the remaining drawer fronts. Now designing drawer fronts is a video by itself. They can come in a lot of variations. I went with the most simple way I could think of. This is just a regular pine, and I put a chamfer on it, and then I put a finish on it. Very simple, very fast to do. Now before I mount this to the drawer, I'm gonna add the screw holes for the handle by using one of these. This is a drawer handle template. It is very easy to use. You just figure out where the middle of the drawer front is, and then you align this middle line with that measurement. Then you take a drawer handle to see which holes to use. And after that, it's up to you where on the
drawer front you want the handle to be installed. I chose these two holes here that are exactly in the middle of the drawer front. And just to make sure that I don't use any other holes by mistake, I marked them out with some masking tape. This type of template is really cheap to buy. You can even 3D print one if you want to, or even make one yourself. I highly recommend using a template instead of using, well, rulers and stuff to figure out where the holes are gonna be. Now when using a template made of plastic like this one, if I use these holes too much with the drill bit, the holes will get too large and no longer function as they should. So what I will do instead is that I will mark in the holes where I want to drill, remove the template, and then drill in those two holes. Now another good tip I have for you is that when you place this template on the piece of the drawer front, you can use one of these tools and then align the template with that depth. Now I already set this one to be in the middle of the drawer front. Installing drawer fronts is actually quite easy. All you have to do is take the drawer front and then roughly align it along the edges here so that it looks good. Then you take a deck of playing cards that have the same thickness as the distance you decided earlier to have between each drawer. And you add the cards like that. Now to fasten the front, I will use screws through the screw holes for the handle and then add screws from the back. And when the screws from the back are installed, I can remove these two and drill holes all the way through to install the handle. The drawer front is now attached to the drawer behind it, and I will use two to make sure it stays exactly where I want it to be. I can now remove the cards and pull out the drawer and add a couple of screws from behind. I had to cut off these screws to make them a little bit shorter, and therefore I don't have a sharp tip anymore. Now for that reason I will add a couple of holes so the screws goes in easier. There you have it, one drawer. Now I just need to do the rest of them. And I will do pretty much the same way I did on the first drawer. I just take my playing cards, add them like that, and add the next drawer, all the way down to the bottom. This wasn't tight enough, so I will unscrew this one and try to press everything up. I'll screw it back in. And now it's a bit tighter. Perfect. Now for this big drawer front, I will add 6 screws from the inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that is how drawers are made from start to finish. I really do hope you have enjoyed watching this video, and if you want to see more content like this, you should subscribe to my channel. But for now, if you want to see something really cool being made, you should take a look at this video.